Good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder and this is BRN AM for Friday, December 18th, 2020. And our top stories today, many are planning to work through the holidays and ways that employers can reduce burnout. Well, joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is George Anders. He's Senior Editor at Large at LinkedIn. George, thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Oh, it's great to be part of it.
Absolutely. It's always great to have you and LinkedIn be a part of the program. So let's jump in because you wrote a story this week about people, and this is not really hard to believe during these very difficult times, but you wrote a story about people actually deciding to work through the holidays. What can you tell us about this, George? This has me a little troubled.
Yeah, so this was quite fascinating. We do a survey every 2 weeks. It's our Workforce Confidence Index. We ask about 5,000 people, how are they feeling about their jobs, their careers, their finances. And every now and then we throw in some bonus questions. And one of them this time was, so you're going to be working through the holidays? And it turns out close to 40% of people have jobs that just don't give them a break. So that's totally understandable. But then for the people who do have time off, we asked them, so are you going to take some extra time to check in on work, look at your email, work on your spreadsheets? And 27% of them said yes. And that number startled me. I mean, to me, we work pretty hard, 50 weeks a year, and then you get to the very end of December and hopefully you've shipped everything you needed to ship. And even if you haven't, this is the chance to reconnect with family. So I was kind of startled that 27% of people said, why watch that holiday movie when I could be texting?
Yeah, and I guess this is really a function of the pandemic, as I mentioned, and I think as you mentioned as well. And look, we really, if you're following CDC guidelines and local, state, and local and state guidelines and federal guidelines, maybe you're not traveling. So, what do? You've already read many books. You've gone through the list of Netflix and Amazon Prime and all the other streaming services. Maybe people feel like they're compelled to do it because they want to preserve their job in a time where, there's economic uncertainty with regards to jobs. I don't know. Any thoughts there?
So there are a bunch of dynamics going on, and you hit on some of the important ones. I mean, first of all, that ski trip to Colorado, that big family reunion in Hawaii, probably not going to happen this year. I mean, you're really flying in the face of an awful lot of advice about proper health care. And the hotel experience is different. The airplane experience is different than it used to be. And even those kind of trips, if you want to take them, are not going to be the relaxing, joyful moment. So that brings a lot more people back home. The other thing, and I really heard from a lot of our readers and our members on this, is that sometimes even just half an hour of getting caught up on work, I think there's this dread of, oh my gosh, it's just piling up on me again and again. And if you can use a little bit of holiday time to clear your email, to get back to your contacts, to build that prospect list, it wouldn't be my first choice for how to do it, but I'm sympathetic for people who say, hey, my job is just piling up on me and I need a little bit of bonus time to keep up. I mean, it's been a tough year for everyone, and this is one of the ways we're seeing it.
I'm sorry, George, didn't mean to step on you. But, what about the mental break that you get? I mean, when you're able to go, even take a drive to go to your parents' house or be with friends, there's a mental, working really hard, whether you're here in the U.S. or abroad, is a mental strain, mental stress. Is there some worry that you might see, or you're hearing from others where you just got to take a break? It's okay to worry about the email, but you know what? You're going to get to it. And everything is just small potatoes. It's all small stuff, to quote the very famous book.
So to pick up on that, my sister's a social worker, and she has this term attitude adjustment. And sometimes you just need a little time away from work to get your smile back, to get your patience back, and not to be that person who's always getting in arguments because you're just so stressed and so worn down that you can't go with the flow. So I would completely agree with you. A couple of days of just remembering who you are when you're not on the job, playing with your kids, getting on a long call with your cousins, going for a walk, doing something that just reconnects you and gets you feeling better about the world. You can bring back that optimism and that comfort and that sense of security into your job come January, and you'll find that will clear a whole lot more problems than just sitting there and getting caught up on your email.
And George, when you do and I should have told the audience because we often reference your work. Devin Banerjee, who normally does the segment, is off this week. always references your work, but and statistics. But do you have any sense for if people, going into 2021, we're probably still going to be working remotely, a lot of us, if we have a job that can do that. But will this maniacal, I would just almost describe it as a maniacal sense of work, will this continue into 2021 up until we get a vaccine where people can go, okay, I can breathe. The uncertainty is starting to dissipate. Is there any sense for how long this goes on?
It's going to be a learning experience for all of us. I mean, one of the things we find in our LinkedIn economic graph research and in our surveys is how different the attitudes are by industry. And you've got some industries that are, especially stressed. Education and healthcare end up at the top of that list. You've got some others, finance, a little calmer, software engineering. I mean, a lot of times you've got engineers who just like to work alone, and the chance to work at home has been a steadier experience. Consulting, this surprised me. Consultants seem pretty calm and benign. I don't know, every time I meet consultants, they're always edgy and trying to make things happen, but maybe the work at home experience has calmed them down a bit. So I think a lot depends on your industry, but even though we've got vaccines coming over the horizon now, it's going to take a while to get everyone vaccinated. I mean, we're talking multi months. We've got as much as 30% of the population that says, oh, I'm not sure I really want to do this vaccine thing. So that's going to slow down the ability for the whole population to get protected. I think eventually we're going to, walk back from this sort of high stress, panic work environment. But we're talking about multi-months. This is not January or February. If we're lucky, it's the summer. It could be something that we don't really get to see until the fall.
Yeah, well, I think it's going to be interesting to watch. And I just hope people can lower their stress levels, take some time to enjoy the holidays, even given the health and the economic woes that we've all faced. Well, George, I'm going to go to a very quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about what employers can do to minimize some of this stress and maybe some of this behavior. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Hi folks, Joe Namath here, and if you're on Medicare, this is important. You're now entitled to eliminate copays and get dental care, dentures, eyeglasses, prescription coverage, in-home aids, unlimited transportation, and home-delivered meals, all at no additional cost. Plus, your zip code may have coverage with a give back benefit that adds money back to your Social Security check every month. Look, with the uncertainty of the virus and vaccines, you need to get everything you're entitled to. Here's the bottom line. Call to get significant benefits at no additional cost and see if your zip code has coverage with the give back benefit. Millions of people have trusted the Medicare Coverage Helpline. You can too. Call now. It's free.
Call 1-800-924-3920. That's 1-800-924-3920.
Welcome back. We're talking to George Anders. He's Senior Editor at Large at LinkedIn. George, thanks so much for staying with us this morning.
Oh, it's great. When we've got more topics to discuss, let's get rolling.
Yeah, and so kind of the follow-up to what we talked about in segment one is, if you're an employer, small, medium, large employer, what are some of the tactics, some of the things you can do to maybe take some of the stress off of employees this holiday and New Year season?
So this is a fascinating area. We at LinkedIn recently took a deep dive into the topic of burnout. And there's been 40 years of research on burnout, and most of it thinks of it as an individual employee problem of what did you do wrong? How did you get so stressed? And of course, with the pandemic sort of changing everything about work and this mass rush into work from home and a lot of industries in upheaval, all of a sudden the penny dropped and we go, you know what? Maybe this is not always just an individual employee. Maybe this is systemic. Maybe this is something that the entire company and its entire environment needs to get a fresh look at. And that is a really interesting area to explore, that we identified a real spike in the rate of burnout, which will not surprise you. But we also found 5 or 6 different steps that companies can take to reduce that burnout risk.
And George, you know, one of the things that we are missing here is we're not near each other. We're not, if we work in a collaborative environment, which a lot of businesses are, you have to work with other people, you work in teams. There's that that loss of that being with other people and working towards a common goal. I mean, is there a way for employers to we use Slack, we can use Slack and certainly LinkedIn and other tools to kind of broach that gap. But, you know, are you finding, at least in the survey results and things and people that you're talking to and the commentary online, that, you know, this is an area of concern? There's no more holiday parties this year, or at least there probably are very few given the COVID restrictions.
There are online holiday parties, and we could go explore that for a minute. I mean, people are trying desperately to, you know, create the ugly sweater contest online, you know, this company singing online. I'm going to move that off to the side. I appreciate the effort, but you're right. It's not the same as the physical one. I mean, the bigger adjustment is in the physical world, you get a certain intensity of feedback. You can tell when the whole room likes your idea. It's a lot harder on a Zoom call. I was just on a really interesting presentation and some people said some terrific things, and then it was just like silence for 4 or 5 seconds. And you start to wonder, did anyone care? I mean, comics are having a terrible time. All the best stand-up comics, when they've got an audience, they know when they're funny and the energy builds and they roll. It's hard seeing anyone who can do Zoom comedy and even get you to smile, let alone laugh. So what's tough for the comics is tough for all of us in regular work as well. But a key thing that companies can do is to provide some sense that there are still opportunities. And one of the differentiators that we found was in companies where people feel I'm working really hard and I'm getting nothing back from my job, I'm just being told come back and do it again. That's very demoralizing. When people feel there's a promotion track, even if it's not giant, if there's a feeling of, you know what, I could have a really good year and get a bonus. I could have a really good year and get a new job title, or even just, you know, a letter from the CEO saying, wow, you did great. That is a motivator. And we have to be mindful that in this very detached, remote world, those reminders don't happen as often. And we need to make sure they come back into the workforce.
Yeah, and people shouldn't underestimate, and I think people haven't, the effort it takes. If you're the CEO or a manager of an organization, within an organization, and you're managing a team, the amount of effort it takes to create that cohesion electronically, as I mentioned, through some of the tools, or just to get people to kind of work and row in the same direction, there's a lot more effort involved in doing that virtually than there ever was in doing that physically. I mean, you can always pull a coworker aside and say, here's where I need you to do better. A lot more difficult to do that and bring that cohesion when you're doing it through a Zoom call or a Skype call or FaceTime.
Totally. And here's one measure that isn't obvious at first, but the moment I explain it, you'll go, oh yeah, that will help. A lot of us feel that we've been drained, that we've been asked to do a lot. One of the ways to recharge yourself is to help other people. So some really interesting initiatives that I wrote about are companies where they created parent groups where people could support each other and, you know, provide advice of, hey, here's some of the, you know, books or TV shows that my kid's watching. They would get people with teenagers who would have their teens be tutors to the, you know, kids who are in 4th or 6th grade. And that way both sides are happier. And the family that's getting the help obviously benefits from it. But the family that's giving the help feels engaged too. Hey, I'm not just sitting at home stuck, I'm needed. I'm valuable. So that ability to get your employees helping each other can be a really powerful step forward, and one that, is a net addition. It doesn't leave people feeling drained.
And one of the areas, and I have said through this pandemic that besides the healthcare workers and the frontline workers, parents have really had to step up. They're not only managing the family, doing work, but they're also balancing, in a lot of cases, teaching their children. And maybe they can't send them off to school, or maybe the kids, if they go off to school, they're also doing virtual. There's probably some balancing that can be done from the employer's perspective, at least in understanding this. And I think a lot of employers have really, first of all, they've gravitated towards this work from home, whereas before a lot of companies said, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. They've seen the benefit of that, but also giving some parents some flexibility so that if they need to take half an hour to make sure their child is sitting in front of the computer and not playing with their Legos or playing with a lacrosse stick, that they're doing that, right?
Yeah, so here's a little tip that plays to that. A lot of Zoom school starts at 9 o'clock. That's when school begins, or 8:30, or whatever the start time would be. One company was just really attuned to that and said, you know what, our meetings are going to start at 9:05 because we want to give you 5 minutes to get your kids settled in front of the screen, make sure the connection works, make sure they're focused, and then you can come in, as opposed to being the parent who's always 3 minutes late because you had to get your kid empowered. Easy adjustment to make, very simple. But again, looking for ways that you can support parents in their challenge. Another way is for senior management to model the fact of, hey, we all have lives, we all have kids, we all have situations. And I would say the ability when senior people will appear with maybe a kid in the background, or some sense that this is not just that corporate meeting where you're sitting in conference room 1272. This is us trying to make a go home. If your boss can signal that, it helps you feel a lot more relaxed about your own situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a human element that, we're not just building widgets, we're not just a cog in the wheel, whatever cliche or metaphor you want to use. We all are collaborating, we're working together, and we all have lives. I think that's important for people to understand, and for businesses to understand it and reinforce as well. Well, George, we're going to leave it there. Really appreciate you coming on the program. Want to wish you and your family a very happy holidays and a happy new year. And we look forward to talking with you and the LinkedIn team throughout all of 2021.
Thanks, Jeffrey, and best wishes to you and all the listeners for the holiday season too.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest or someone you think we should talk to, then drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the information in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Don't forget, we're back again tomorrow for our weekly retrospective show. We'll be taking a look at some of our best segments for the week, and we'll have a very special guest. So until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited, and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.